I have been asked for years to make a video about one of these. Now, as I'm talking to you now, I don't actually know what I'm going to call this video. I might call it something like Some Points About the Morning Star. But then again, I might not use the word morning star at all, because is this a morning star? Now, years ago, I used to call these morning stars because that's how I was introduced to the weapon. And one could, from a lexicographer's point of view, say that if most people call something a morning star, then it is a morning star. But the medieval purists might be oscillating in their fury to hear me use that term, because strictly speaking, the word morning star refers to a spiked ball, which might not be on the end of a length of chain, it might just be on the end of a stiff haft. And a spike suggests something for penetrating and actually damaging by sticking in someone. And are these really spikes or studs? How big does something have to be before it's no longer a stud but a spike? A lot of the ones I've seen in museums have got smaller spiked stroke studs than these, little pyramidal things, which are clearly not for penetration. And even something this big, if I'm using this against someone in a suit of armour, and underneath his plate, which will be not touching his skin, will be away from him a little bit, there'll be a padded jacket, it's not going to penetrate very much. Even if it does go through the armour and through the padding underneath, it's only going to go a little way into him. It's not going to kill him through penetration. I put it to you that the main reason that they have these things is for grip. So you take a big swing with this thing, you thwack someone as hard as you possibly can. He's wearing plate armour. You don't want the ball, if it's just a sphere, to glance off. You want to transfer all the energy of your blow to him. So if you've got something that'll give you grip, and it may not be just one spike hitting, it might be two of them or three of them hitting against the armour like that. So imagine those three standing like a tripod against him, bam! Then it's going to transfer all its energy to him, because it'll come to a halt against its armour, not skid off, and all the power of that blow will go into the guy to stagger him and to stun him, not to penetrate him. So anyway, is this a morning star? Well, you could say it's a one-handed flail, or you could say it's a ball and chain flail, and that way not use the term morning star and not cause too much fury amongst medieval purists. What was this used for, and how common were they? I don't know, and I suspect it isn't known. There are so few representations of these.
And when you do find one, it so often gives you an excuse not to take it seriously. Look at this one, for instance. Look at the size of the ball on the end of that chain. It's about the size of his head. It would weigh a quarter of a ton. And do you really believe that this war wagon existed, being dragged over mountains by a single horse, pulling it on a chain made out of scales of metal, which is attached to the front of the front wheel, as far as I can tell? There are no axles. There are 3 wheels of different sizes and funny blade things pointing this way and that, and goodness knows what's meant to be happening at the front of this. And, what's that weapon meant to be then? A lot of illustrations from the period are from Bibles, and they're of Bible characters. Yes, they're dressed up in modern dress, but the artist is still using his imagination with weaponry and other things. So, are we to believe this weapon? A lot of examples I've seen in museums look pretty dodgy to me, and I think were actually made in the Victorian period. But it is noteworthy that a lot of them have very short chains, like this one. And yes, Sam, those are bardishes.
So did they actually exist? Were they used in warfare? Well, possibly, but they certainly weren't very common if the medieval pictures of battles at the time are anything to go by, because everyone in those are using halberds and spears and swords, and not these. So they were never tremendously popular, even if they did exist. How effective were they? Well, presumably not tremendously effective, because then they would have been really popular and they would have been in all the treatises and all the pictures of battles. I can tell you that holding this thing, it's really tiring. I mean, it's very difficult to hold it still. If I hold it upright like that, as it swings about, you can see that it's difficult just to hold it still in my hand. It would be very difficult and uncomfortable to carry around with this ball bashing against me as I moved about. It's not exactly a very quick to draw weapon either, and it's a very easy to lose weapon. If this actually does stick into a shield or a person, I may not be able to get it out again. If this chain wraps around a weapon, I might not get my weapon back. Now, some depictions of these, generally by fantasy artists, show really long chains, and you can imagine then swishing it round for a huge amount of power, and then wrapping it several times around someone's halberd, and then pulling the halberd out of his hand. And some people writing rules for games might give this a disarm capability for that reason. No, I'm pretty sure they didn't have long chains on them. Several reasons. One, if you're using it in a battle, you've got friends to your left and right and behind you, and they're not going to appreciate your swinging this around and getting it tangled around their weapons and hitting them in the head. So that's one reason. Another reason is if I've got a one-handed weapon and I go round the half of a double-handed weapon, something like a halberd, who do you think is going to win that pulling match? I've got one hand, he's got two hands. I think I'm going to lose my weapon and he's still going to have a halberd. So I don't see these used as disarming. Another thing is, you'll notice that the chain is quite short. It is so short that I'm in no danger of hitting myself in the hand with it. If I had a longer chain, my hand would be in tremendous danger. And if I spent any while, practicing with it to get, reasonably good at it before going into a fight in which I might lose my life, so that's quite an incentive for practice, I'm very likely to end up smashing my hand at some point during the practice before I get any good at it. So, no, a short chain so it keeps you safe from your own weapon. Stop the press. There is more, because after making this video, I thought I'd just check what Wikipedia has to say about these weapons, and it turned out that Wikipedia had a page on these, and it said something rather odd. It said that the Metropolitan Museum in New York had 4 of these weapons, I didn't know that, and that they had chains that were long enough for the user to mash his own hand with them. I thought, uh-oh, I don't want to be wrong, I better check this. So I did. I wrote to the Metropolitan, and the correspondence went back and forth, and I said, it's a little bit suspicious that none of these is on display. I haven't seen them when I was there, and none of them is even pictured in your catalogue. And they said, yeah, yes, they are not pictured in our catalogue. I said, is that because you're not convinced that they're actually authentic and you think these might be forgeries from later periods? And at first they were saying, oh, no, they are authentic. But then a couple of weeks later, I got another email saying, we've consulted another expert, and we're now more inclined to the opinion that perhaps they are later forgeries. So we're going to describe them in the catalogue and put question marks next to the date. And I was very glad to see that Wikipedia was wrong. Why was I glad? Well, because I was a bit worried that I'd said something in this video that was wrong, and also it's just, makes me just that little bit more smug that I got something right and Wikipedia got it wrong. There are 3, not 4, of these in the Metropolitan Museum, and the chain that you see, for instance, in this picture here, the chain that apparently threatens the user's hand does not, because that bit that looks like the handle there, that's actually the cap that goes on the end of the wooden handle. The wooden handle would have been much longer, and the user's hand would have been safe from his own weapon. So I can breathe easily again. Phew. I didn't say something that was completely and demonstrably wrong. Still might have been a bit wrong, though. Lindybeige!